Hello, my name is Ethan. I'm from Australia, and I recently watched your Doctor Who SpoilerCast. Now, I've been following the series myself, and I've got to say I agree with a lot of the comments. There were many things that were wrong that Brandon, Jinx and Jordan said during the podcast. Now, Gus, you did very well. You actually got some of them right. Having not known anything, I applaud you. So, I've gone ahead, I've listened through the entire cast, and I have written down the things that have either been explained badly and tried to, explain them better. Okay, and I'm doing this in order, from the beginning of the spoiler cast to the end. So you can just follow that, and I can try and reiterate all of your answers. Okay, so first, what is a Dalek? Well, the first appearance was in the original series, episode 2. Guess what it was called? The Daleks! Now, the Daleks were created by Terry Nation, who went on to make other really good series, and he even made a musical featuring the Daleks on stage. Now, the Daleks are from the planet Skaro. They were originally humanoid in form, and lived with various other races for a time, until a nuclear war began to mutate them. It was a slow process, and near the end, only two mostly pure species remained on the planet. So there were the Thals and the Kaleds that were later to become the Daleks. Now Davros, he was a prominent Kaled scientist. He predicted a mutation in the genes of the Kaleds and the Thals, and he designed the Dalek machine for his people to be able to survive in the harsh environment. The machine was called a Dalek, obviously, and the creatures inside also became part of the machine. Emotions were removed, and logical calculating minds were put in. So it would allow the people inside to remain sane, and it didn't work out well. It doesn't work out well after a while. In an attempt to quicken the mutation and conquer the Thals, in his new war machines, he overthrew his own government and decided to make himself the scientific elite. The Fourth Doctor stepped in, and in what is theorized to be the first act, might be the first act of the Time War, delayed his plans. The First Doctor meets them centuries later, when the Daleks have become the dominant life form on Skaro, and the Thals have mutated full circle. They've gone from being humanoids into mutated creatures, and then back into humanoids again. And the Doctor and the Daleks, they encounter each other through time and space. They have battles here and there. Over the years, they've learned how to fly. They've attained shields for themselves, and they've assimilated other species to force evolution. In the episode Daleks in Manhattan, one of the Daleks sort of ate one of the humans from Manhattan and became a human Dalek hybrid. But that might only have been them, so we're not entirely sure on that. At one point, the Daleks even had a civil war between the Renegades, who were led by the Black Dalek, and they believed they were pure, and the Imperials, who were led by a resurrected Davros, who believed that they needed to alter themselves in order to survive. And the Daleks were also the main threat during the Time War, and as a way to survive, the Daleks mutated other species into a similar genetic makeup of their own to grow their numbers. Now, the first instance of the Dalek flying is in the Seventh Doctor's Remembrance of the Daleks, although Davros does hover in the Sixth Doctor's episode Revelation of the Daleks. Okay, moving on to Clara, the Impossible Girl. First appearance, new series, 7, episode 1, Asylum of the Daleks. Now, she appeared as Osborne Oswald, and she was trapped inside a Dalek, and she didn't know that she was a Dalek. She basically dies, saving the Doctor and his companions by wiping the Daleks' memory banks of any mention of him. Now, this is a bit weird because Daleks are not machines. They're organic, and I doubt that their greatest enemy can be wiped from their minds just by tapping on a computer. It's not like their memories are hooked up to the thing, they've got their own minds. She then reappears in The Snowman, which is later that series, as Clara Oswald, a nanny, in Victoria, London. and she dies again while saving the Doctor. Stephen Moffat has a thing with dying. Everyone has to die. The Doctor dies. Companions die. Bad guys die. Surprise. And so her dying, for some reason, intrigues him, because it's not a natural thing. Doctor Who. And he discovers that she's the same woman from Asylum of the Daleks, and he has to find out who she is. In The Bells of St. John, it's an episode named after one thing that happens at the beginning, where the TARDIS phone rings. He meets her again after staying in a monastery, which makes no sense for the plot whatsoever. He manages to save her this time, and during his travels he decides to study her to find out why she's so special, why she keeps coming back. As it turns out, the other Claras are herself. They've been broken up through time. She's been broken up through time to interact with the Doctor at various points in his life and influence decisions that will keep him alive. So she's there to keep him alive at different points in time and space. Now, the Doctor, his first appearance, obviously, Series 1 of the original series, and Episode 1, An Unearthly Child. The Doctor is a Time Lord from the planet Gallifrey in the constellation of Cerberus. A Time Lord is not a species, it's a title given to Gallifreyans who have the skill and power to control or utilize time travel. They have 2 hearts and have an unusual ability to regenerate their bodies as well as slightly modify their personalities to become a completely different person. Although this process can only be performed a maximum of 12 times, so they can only have 13 lives. The Doctor has thus far officially regenerated 11 times, coming up to 12, but it is unclear whether John Hurt's regeneration cost him a cycle. The Doctor is not a title. It is his title, sorry. It is his title, not his actual name. He strives to make things better in the least violent way possible. On several occasions, namely anniversary specials, the various incarnations of the Doctor overlap. When this happens, the past ones, the early ones, don't recognise their future selves, unless they're informed or have been introduced already. See the Children in Need special with Doctors 5 and 10, where part of the plot is actually 10 trying to convince 5 that he is the Doctor in his future. Now, like I said, the Doctor never uses violence in any situation unless it is necessary. There have been many instances where it has been completely against the military method. See Doctor Who and Silurians, and the Sea Devils, where the Third Doctor attempts to negotiate with other species to share the Earth with humans. Only in situations where there are no other options will he resort to violence and or kill to protect the greater good. This also involves interfering with the timeline. On occasion he has snapped and done both these things without doing everything possible or with regard for the timeline. Good example, the Waters of Mars, 10th Doctor's Waters of Mars, where he effectively changes time, resulting in the quickening of his eventual regeneration. Now, the Time War. First appearance, the official first appearance, is the new series, Episode 2, The End of the World, where he talks to Rose about that he says that there was a war and everyone lost. The suggested first appearance is Genesis of the Daleks, like I said before, with the 4th Doctor coming in and delaying the Daleks' eventual rise. The Time War is an event of conflict between Gallifrey and Skaro, as well as various worlds in between. To minimise damage to the universe, because it would be cataclysmic damage, the Time Lords encase the battle zone with a time lock, effectively removing that segment of space and time from the regular flow of time, as long as the war would last. The Doctor took part in his 8th incarnation, and supposedly regenerated into a battle-hardened 9th Doctor, who finished off the war with the Monks, which wiped out both Daleks and Gallifreyans after the continuous and brutal war, where the dead would be resurrected to fight again. So, you probably really want to finish that off. It must be noted that Gallifreyans and Time Lords are not the only species. Gallifreyans and Daleks are not the only species to fight in the Time War. There have been many mentions of that, and even the Sontarans, they know that there have been other species who were able to fight in the Time War, and they get a bit pissed about it in one of the episodes. Now, Doctor 8.5, or John Hurt's Doctor, the first appearance, new Series 7, Episode 13, The Name of the Doctor. Doctor 8.5, John Hurt, apparently came about after the 8th Doctor, who had been trying to avoid outright conflict during the Time War. and instead focused on helping the injured. This is all from the small mini episode that's meant to be a prelude to the 50th anniversary special coming up in a few hours. He attempted to save a woman in distress. Upon finding out that he was a Time Lord, by this point the Time Lords were pretty much a bit more savage in their fighting in the end of time. The 10th Doctor's final episode, you find out that they were actually quite evil towards the end. But I mean, you know, you'd be pissed off at the Time Lords for trapping everyone inside the war. She refuses to let him save her on moral grounds. They crash on the planet Khan, and both of them die. And as a note here, Khan and the Sisterhood of Khan, who both make an appearance, obviously, are both from an original series 4th Doctor episode called The Brain of Morbius. They weren't just put in there. Well, hopefully they weren't just put in there randomly. I really hope they're just not a one-off plot device that don't appear again. Now that they protect the sacred flame, which, heating and liquefying the rock over ages, produces a mystic elixir that gives eternal life for those who continue to drink it. The Doctor is resurrected for a brief time by the Sisterhood of Khan to choose either to die or to be reborn in a new form that could end the Time War. They have prepared various potions that can influence a regeneration to suit the Doctor's needs, although how they managed to do this is not exactly stated. The Doctor chooses the warrior and regenerates, knowing full well that the actions he will make as his new persona cannot be made with the good name of the Doctor. The quote he actually uses, the 11th Doctor uses when he meets the 8.5 is, "You didn't do it in the name of the Doctor." Okay, now you mentioned the space whale from The Beast Below is actually the star whale from the new Series 5 Episode 2, The Beast Below. With the Earth's surface being destroyed by solar flares, that's the solar flares you were talking about, Starship UK was built to house the inhabitants of the UK, excluding Scotland, and flee into space in search of a new home. Unable to make an engine powerful enough to last, they captured a star whale that travelled close to Earth and built an inhabitable city on its back. To pilot the whale, they torture it continuously to force it into forward motion. Now the Doctor, when he discovers this, he has three options. As you stated, set the whale free and leave the city to die in the vacuum of space, kill the whale and let the city drift on top of its corpse, or make the whale brain dead so it can't feel pain, but will keep the city moving and the people safe. He curses that it isn't a good option either way, but it is the best he has. You know, it's the best one he has, brain dead whale. Saying also after this that he can no longer be called a Doctor. It's just too savage. It's inhumane to put a species term on it. As it turns out, Amy, his companion at the time, releases the star whale from the torture, and it continues towing the city because it came to Earth to help in the first place. Okay, so now the name of the Doctor also needs a little bit of explaining. New Series 7, Episode 13, obviously, name of the Doctor. Now, the reckoning behind it is that the Doctor should never visit his own grave because it might create a paradox, as it always would, and if you cross your own timeline, interacting with his remains or even his own tomb. It is almost as bad as crossing your own timeline. There may be clues as to how you died at this grave that he can use to avoid his death altogether, and again you could create the paradox. His grave is in fact the old TARDIS, withering and dysfunctional with all its systems growing out of control as well as its outer body. Inside, instead of the body of the TARDIS, instead of a body, the TARDIS, it's not just a light in the TARDIS, it houses a map of the Doctor's personal timeline. Somehow it's converted his body into his memories, and using its power to time travel as a gateway to these particular memory points in time, although I don't know why the Doctor would make himself this vulnerable, especially when he's going on about not creating paradoxes. It's just not really that well reckoned out. Now, also there was a bit of confusion about the different series of Doctor Who. So the first the original series run was from First Doctor to the Seventh Doctor, which went from the 23rd of November 1963 to the 6th of December 1989. Then you had the American TV movie, Eighth Doctor, 27th of May 1996, and the new series run, Ninth Doctor to the 12th Doctor, the 26th of March 2005. The new series of Doctor Who was not a reboot, but rather a continuation from the original series. The American TV movie was actually moderately well received. They even had a Bible. They had a whole thing written up about it, and they wanted to keep it quite British. They just didn't have the backing for a continuing series. Its continuity, however, the entire episode, has been included into the canon for the rest of the series. Between the 89-05 hiatus, they had 2 Children in Need specials, and they even had many audio adventures. The 5th Doctor to the 8th Doctor, as well as several others playing the 1st to the 3rd Doctor. And there have actually been more movies of Doctor Who, but they've been movie versions of episodes. So they've made a movie version of the Daleks and the Dalek invasion of Earth from the 1st Doctor's era. And that the reason why that kiss of the 11th Doctor and River is quite awkward is because it's a quick kiss and she's also poisoning him. And sure, she's much older physically than Matt Smith's Doctor, but I didn't hear any complaints on a physically 41-year-old 9th Doctor and a canonically 18-year-old Rose Tyler kissing. You know, Clara and the Doctor, they've not said they're in a relationship, so I don't know where you guys are getting that. They've not done anything much. And please, lay off Alex Kingston. Show some respect. She's not just a character, she's an actress. And lay off the Tennant hate too. You're talking to people who haven't seen the show before. Give them a chance to have their own opinion. Now, next up is the Sonic Screwdriver. First appearance was the original Series 5, Episode 6, Fury from the Deep. The Sonic Screwdriver is a device made by the Doctor, and it's also had some attachments in the... there was a kit, a repair kit in the TARDIS. It also has a sonic lance. It uses sonic waves to perform tasks, much like a Swiss Army knife. It does many things. It can lock, unlock doors, track devices and machinery, interrupt transmat beaming, unscrew bolts, set off landmines, activate and disarm devices and machinery, and above all, cannot be used in a directly offensive manner. Much like the Doctor himself, it has changed appearances over the years, but has had several ongoing laws. It cannot penetrate deadlock seals. A new one was also that it can't do wood very well, but I'm not sure how well that's been carried on. It's not a magic wand, and it cannot do everything. I'll get to a reason why that's one of the laws. And like I said before, it doesn't kill, harm, or to the extent of torture. Like there wasn't Partners in Crime, new 4th series episode where he held the 10th Doctor held 2 sonic screwdrivers together and created a big sonic blast which ruptured eardrums and stuff. So it doesn't torture people under regular circumstances. So on its own, it's harmless. Now, it was destroyed in the 5th Doctor's episode, The Visitation, and was not seen again until the TV movie and subsequently 2005 return. The reason for its destruction was because it became too much of a writer's way out of a situation, and it was a stunted plot device. It stunted development and plot twists. I mean, you always knew who was going to get out using the sonic screwdriver, and now that it's been brought back, it was used quite well through the first 4 series and the specials, but now Stephen Moffat's, he's kind of gone back to the magic wand stance with the sonic screwdriver. I mean, you see him using it everywhere in places that doesn't make sense. The Doctor's catchphrase is not run. He says it a lot, but it's not run. He's had several, so he's had Alonzi, Geronimo, Fantastic. Don't think he's really... Oh, and Would You Like a Jelly Baby? The only time that Matt Smith, I have to say, gets really dark is in The Beast Below, when he's really angry about the decisions the humans have made about the space whale, the star whale, and he shouts, "No human has anything to say to me!" I'm not going to shout out really loud, I don't want to disrupt the neighbours. The whole you never put me in a trap speech isn't dark, per se, just a level of gleeful cunning and confidence. You kind of need to learn the difference between dark and just a bit of confidence. The cracks in time and space, all throughout the 5th series, did not make a clean slate for the show, new continuity. And if it did, I wasn't told about it. I don't think the fans were told about it. And if this is the case, if it really was, to make a clean slate, it's a bit of a middle finger to everyone to not officially announce it. I mean, because here we are, we were talking about continuity, and, I mean, never mind. The last multi-Doctor episode was actually the 6th Doctor's, the 2 Doctors, and the 2nd Doctor with his companion Jamie making an appearance. There was also the 1993 Children in Need Special, Dimensions in Time, with all surviving Doctors making an appearance, as well as the 2005 Time Crash with the 10th and the 5th Doctor. Christopher Eccleston, you said he just outright denied he didn't want to come back, but he was actually interested in coming back, but denied. He declined it, but we don't know why. It's not been made clear, but you'd think if he was interested he might have gotten a peek at the script, and maybe he didn't like what he saw. Colin Baker, he wasn't an arsehole. He got screwed over by the BBC. At the time, they didn't really like the show. They wanted to get new stuff, and they figured Doctor Who was a good thing to plug for funding. And they didn't want him back anyway. And they recasted. They pretty much recasted almost behind his back. And when they asked him to come back and do a regeneration, he said no. So he's not an arsehole. He rightfully declined that regeneration. So, again, might be better if you did some research. And Tom Baker was on Doctor Who for 7 series, not 8, 1974 to 1980. The TARDIS, now I'm going to explain the TARDIS here, this is going to be a bit difficult. Luckily I've read the manual. The first appearance, original series 1, episode 1, An Unearthly Child. And I'm pretty sure I've got most of this right. The TARDIS was created by the Gallifreyans, and was a milestone in their mastery of time. The technology of Rassilon, combined with the engineering marvels of Omega, two both prominent Time Lords in Gallifreyan history, created the TARDIS, which stands for Time and Relative Dimension in Space. Coined by Susan in the first episode, the Doctor's granddaughter. The episode was The Unearthly Child, but Susan is the Doctor's granddaughter. It was later adopted by the Time Lords. The TARDIS travels through time and space and is dimensionally transcendental, which means that it's bigger on the inside than the outside. Now I'm going to get to explaining that. The outside of the TARDIS is merely an image projected by a device called the chameleon circuit, which transforms a TARDIS into a relatively normal object in whatever environment it happens to land in. So it landed here, and it landed in London in 1963, but the chameleon circuit got stuck after it transformed into a police box. So it doesn't transform anymore. It has. He's fixed it, but he likes the look of it now. It has turned invisible, but it doesn't do it very often. I think with one episode. It does produce a field, which subconsciously makes passers-by not notice it. It's well explained in the 3-parter Master episode in the new Series 3, where they make the keys and they put them around their neck. So it hasn't turned invisible very often, except in The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon, that I can remember. The inside of the TARDIS is actually inside another dimension. It's another dimension entirely. It can be accessed through the portal or the door, and it is constantly growing and can be altered by the Doctor himself whenever he chooses and in whatever style he wants. He can even delete rooms to save power. He does this in Castrofalva, the first 5th Doctor episode. It's all powered by a self-contained supernova black hole event. So a supernova and the black hole at the same time. and it's held within the engine and powers the machinery. But the heart of the TARDIS controls the organic components. The TARDIS is actually alive, and has been stated that they are grown, and also the alive part has also been noted at by the Doctor. He's said several times that the TARDIS is alive and how it's got a personality and stuff. Now the grinding, the engine noise of the TARDIS is actually due to the two reasons. Firstly, it's the tearing of space and time. It has to make a noise, but it might not need to be that loud, because it actually the TARDIS actually requires 6 people to pilot it, and you've only got one Doctor there, which actually might hint at a career. And he might have actually had a career in piloting the TARDIS with 5 others at one point, which would explain why he knows some of the functions, but also why he doesn't know all of them and can't pilot it correctly when he starts off. Now, like I said, it rips time and space. The TARDIS rips time and space to go through it and fly around, but I'd also assume that it would also be able to repair the rips behind it. It has been said that the grinding noise has been made due to the handbrake being on, but there have been, in Smith and Jones, the Doctor clearly states that the handbrake, he's turning off the handbrake, so the fact that the grinding noise is still there, probably not the handbrake. So I don't know what the hell's happening there. Now, Amy and Rory got a little bit caught up with the angels. Amy and Rory were sent back in time, to the same time, because they were touched by the same angel. It's because the angel was created or born at that time. So that's why it had that specific time spot. But I'm not going to get too caught up on the inconsistencies of the Weeping Angels, because I think they've just been ruined as a monster. The Statue of Liberty Angel, probably one of the big ones. Another is the fact that the Doctor can arrive in New York in the 1920s without any problems landing, but time and space is apparently very bad there all the time, so it's weird that he can do that. Saving Amy and Rory as well. Again, I'm not going to go into it. And with the way that Moffat writes it, if he wants Amy and Rory to come back, like he said, I'm sure he would actually have the Doctor wave his sonic screwdriver around despite it not being a magic wand. The whole reading the future thing, you read the future, it's gonna happen, it kind of conflicts with the whole finding out how you die thing with the Doctor's grave. Plot errors are bound with Moffat, be warned. Fixed points in time and space as well, they're a big one. Like, they're big things. So anything from a death to a massive global scale event, something that everyone would know about in history books. Those are the things you can't change. And when you were talking about the waters of Mars, now the woman there, she commits suicide not because she's affected badly by the events. She's quite cool-headed throughout the whole thing. She actually doesn't want the Doctor to win, because he's gone a bit bad by this point. He's changing time to suit his own desires, and she knows he shouldn't have that power, so she's going to deny it. It's like snapping him out of it. She knew exactly what she was doing. She had character. And it was as special, by the way. Strax, his species is Sontaran, a clone race in perpetual war with a race called the Rootans. Their first appearance was in the 3rd Doctor's episode called The Time Warrior. And no, the 5th Doctor wasn't as silly looking as Tom Baker. He only ran around in cricket whites and wore a stick of celery on his lapel. No, not at all. Silly looking. We haven't had an episode since May 18th of this year. Peter Capaldi. Actually, the 5th Doctor fought off his regeneration in the Caves of Androzani for a whole 25-minute episode in order to save his companion. Now, that's dedication. You had Tennant just fighting enough to say goodbye, and maybe he didn't want to go at the end, but, Davison. And the Master never only knocked 3 times at all in the episode. I don't know what you were talking about there. He always knocked 4 times. It was just to confuse us viewers, thinking that it was the Master who would bring about the Doctor's death. And Wilfred was the name of Donna's grandfather. Great companion. I'm getting near the end here. The Dalek plunger was designed to connect with new technologies, like the Dalek technologies easily. It would suction onto a rounded control panel or holder, and the Dalek could operate or pick up the object with ease. The plunger can also be used as an offensive weapon, brain scanner and hacking device. See the 9th Doctor's Dalek and the 10th Doctor's Doomsday. Martha Jones was not the worst companion ever. She had quite a good story and actually developed, unlike others. Like I said before, leave those opinions up to the newbies, please. People need to make up their minds by themselves. Okay, now, that's all I've got with the whole spoiler cast. Now just a little message from me, guys. You please do your research for this show and all your other shows as well, because it's disrespectful to us when you go on without knowing your stuff. And if you don't know, please call up some professionals, call up some people who know what they're talking about. Leave it to them. Thank you for listening, and I hope this reaches Rooster Teeth eventually, and maybe you can clear up a few things before the 50th airs, but I doubt it because I'm not sure this will ever actually reach you. Okay, thank you for listening, and I hope I've cleared up things for the fans and made things simpler for you newbies as well. Thank you very much.